'Tis I, your old pal King Chuck. I hope you're having a happy weekend. It's starting to snow here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yes, the leaves are on the ground. The trees have already changed color. Yes, summer's definitely over. Womp womp. And of course, winter is on its way. And last week, even though it's hard to believe that it's been about 1 year since we, many dumbasses went to the polls and decided, yeah, we're gonna vote for Trump. We don't want to have a transgender on the beer can anymore. So they decide, yeah, let's go ahead and vote for Trump again. Even though during his first term, he ended with a really bad economy and a lot of money was being wasted on things that we really didn't need. So let me explain this to you. So, since Trump was elected president, we know it all. We know it all, folks. He is really trying hard to get Project 2025 to become the law of the land. And, he is, the government's now shut down because the Democrats are trying to keep ADA, the Obama, they unfairly call it Obamacare, but it's really the Affordable Care Act. And it's all about the tax subsidies. It's all about the Epstein files. And of course, we all know Donald Trump. He is a man who likes the bad guy. Just like that CZ guy that he recently took out of jail. Commuted his sentence, and he was a guy who was tied with a lot of terrorist groups, but he was also tied with Donald Trump's business stuff. And it's sad, folks. And it's like I see it a lot in a lot of people who voted for him. I have a coworker who was so happy when he became president again because no taxes on tips, we're not going to have taxes on overtime anymore, blah 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 blah. And then it's like, now he's quitting because our company has not given raises in years. It's true, our company, the company I work for, has not handed out raises in in several years. I haven't had a raise in almost 2 years, give or take. And now we're starting to lose some people. And of course, Trump's tariffs are a big factor as to why people are quitting. And I can go on and on, but this is the tariffs are really ripping everybody apart. Everything's more expensive, and we, the people, are the ones absorbing the costs. Donald Trump, of course, even praised Walmart for the fact that he claims that his tariffs are the reason why Walmart put out their Thanksgiving list this year and everything's cheaper. Well, it's because there's fewer items on the list, and they are putting their great value brand on there as well, as opposed to name brand stuff. This is, folks, they are spinning and lying. They want to tell you that everything on this earth is hunky-dory, but it ain't. And it's all because Donald Trump is a lying sack of shit who needs to be put in jail. That's who he is. Now, I want to explain this to you about Project 2025. And now there's a giant push from the religious right here in America to outlaw pornography, even internet porn. So the other day I was scrolling through Facebook when lo and behold, I saw an ad for something called the November Project. With the November Project, they are telling people that they would pledge. They are telling people to pledge to not look at pornography for a month. And why is it? Oh, porn destroys families. It hurts people. It hurts women. Oh, it's bad. The average, they even cry that the average teenager looks at porn for the very first time at 13 years old, which is kind of true, especially with me. I was about 14 when I was at my uncle's house, and he had a couple of nudie mags on his table. And what happened was, what happened was, it turns out that one of the magazines that he had in his possession was called Club. And Club basically made Playboy look like Walt Disney. Yeah. Playboy never got into hardcore, obviously. But, the story was, Hefner was, a lot of people credit Hefner for trying to keep things, R-rated, not necessarily X-rated. But what happened was, he decided that people wanted to, it's like, that's what he did. He decided, one fact about Playboy was that way back in, one of the fun facts about Playboy magazine was that way back in 1960, back until about 1969, Hugh Hefner would never put a picture of a woman's groin, if you will, the vagina, the pussy, the vajayjay, that part of the body. And the reason why was because he was afraid that he would be slapped with an obscenity charge. But this is what happened instead. So what happened was, this magazine called Penthouse came around. And Penthouse showed vajayjay from day one. And so what happened was, Hefner knew that he now had competition. And, Penthouse was a very popular magazine in England. So this is what happened. He decided to hit two birds with one stone. The first woman to officially show her vag in Playboy was a black woman, Paula Kelly. She was a dancer and actress in the musical Hair. So that's kind of a fun fact for you. But anyway, Club magazine made Playboy look like it made it look like Walt Disney. You had men and women fucking and sucking their hearts out. And my dad actually told me, son, this is what happens in a normal relationship when people are really into each other. And you know what? He was right. People should never be afraid of sex. But that's the problem. They think sex is gross and nasty, and that, it hurts families. And, I think that's what happens. Parents need to talk to their kids about sex. And unfortunately, there's some parents out there that don't talk to their kids about sex because their brains they were teched in the head by all these religious nuts who all believe that that if you look at porn, you're going to hell. And and as I've said multiple times, folks, people who are anti-porn have the tendency of being the worst human beings on the face of the earth. when I was a young boy, I went to a church in northern Michigan called New Hope. And New Hope, unfortunately, their pastor, David Stenfest, wanted $1.7 million. That was the big reason why my father and I left the church. And then what happened was, that was the big reason. But then there were other reasons. Another big reason was my dad actually dated a woman at New Hope. And guess what she did? She cheated on him. She taught me a lesson that Christian women are the scum of the earth. And I mean, it's like, I'll be honest with you, it's the part of the reason why if I go to a dating site and the first sentence is, I put Jesus first in everything that I do, and yeah, well, guess what's going to happen? Yeah, it's an instant left swipe for me. But of course, New Hope had this asshole, John Clark, in the Bible it said Jesus went to a group of young men and told them that if you lust in your heart, if you think of a woman sexually, it's committing adultery in your heart, and other shit that's out of context. That was what New Hope was trying to do. They were trying to tell kids, if you think about sex for one split second, you're going to hell. And this is why I quit New Hope. I was so happy when my father sat me down and told me we're leaving New Hope. And guess what? It was one of the best decisions he ever made in his life. That church, any church, should never tell people how to live their lives. Because guess what happened to John Clark? Many, many years later, he started his own ministry, Westside Community Church in Traverse City, and he stole $500,000 from the church. And when he was caught, guess what he did? He walked to the back of his house and he took a shotgun, blasted his brains out. Of course, there's a million different anti-porn people that are out there, or were out there. Back in the 60s, there was an asshole named Keating. Charles Keating was his name. Charles Keating was a part of the Catholic. He and the Catholic Church made all these anti-nudity mag films, like Perversion for Profit, and what was the other film? Pages of Death was another one that he made. Back in the 80s, he was a part of the savings and loan scandal, and he swindled millions of dollars from people, and he ended up going to jail. Yeah. And we can talk about religious right people who did all the same thing. They are crooks, folks, and they like to scare you into thinking that, you did wrong, so now you got to give me money. That's what they do, folks. And this November Project is another continuation. So I did my research on this November Project, and guess who is behind it? Brigham Young University, which, of course, is another tentacle of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. And I'm like, okay, I had a good friend of mine for many, many years. He was actually Chuck69.com's, I would call him the biggest fan that site ever had. And what happened was he told me, his wife was a Mormon growing up, and she was abused and, was forced to do things she didn't want to do, but had to do anyway. And I mean, it's a very disgusting religion. And they're very far right-wing. They are all Trump supporters, too. And, of course, you know what happened with Charlie Kirk. He was murdered by a Mormon boy. He grew up not knowing right from wrong, and Kirk, was acting like a total asshole, and he died because of, he died in the hands of this kid. And I know Charlie Kirk was not a good guy at all. He was pro-Second Amendment. He was anti-women. He said that black people are terrible human beings. That's who he was. He was an asshole. But the point is that it's funny how this ultra-right-wing cocksucker, got murdered by another ultra-right-wing cocksucker. And he literally was, because he was dating a transgender woman. So, you see, folks, I want to tell you a sad story about my childhood. So I'm friends on Facebook with two people who, a brother and sister who moved into my neighborhood when I was a kid. And they were from Detroit. They were part of we moved away from Detroit to get away from black people situation. And so they moved into the last house on the street. And then what happened was they ended up being the type of people who wanted more from us than what they would give us, especially the daughter. So the daughter of the family was not, so she was adopted, even though she was a doppelganger for her mom. They looked exactly like each other. And what happened was, so the story was, she got into many fights on the school bus, and right around the same time, what happened was, when I got my driver's license, we already bought a car for me. She would run straight to my car and beg me for a ride to and from school. And guess what my payment was? Her yelling at me. So the story was, one day I was actually driving my dad's car because my car was in the shop. The transmission blew. It was a 91 Dodge Stratus. And, the sad truth about Mopar vehicles are that I learned the hard way that their transmissions don't last forever. So my car was in the shop. I was driving my dad's 85 Eldorado, Cadillac Eldorado. And one day I was listening, so I had it on my dad's tape deck, and I had Korn, and the song All Day I Dream About Sex, Adidas, was on. And this bitch yelled and screamed at me, "Turn it off now!" She was self-centered. "I don't like this song." And so I took out the tape. If you have an old tape deck, it goes straight to the radio. It was on 106.7 The Peak, the big top 40 station in Northern Michigan at the time. And the Spice Girls were on. It's like I had drifted straight from musical heaven straight to hell. These four skanks from Europe who, and I still wonder if they were real. I'm sorry to break it to you folks, but the Spice Girls, I don't know if they ever wrote a song or if they actually sang a song. And what's funny is that one of them was just recently knighted by the Queen recently. No, knighted by the King, excuse me. I forgot that the Queen Elizabeth died in England, but because Victoria Beckham, because she was David Beckham's wife. And I'm like, I don't understand, folks. The 90s, it's like, the early 90s, early mid 90s, girls were alternative. They were fun and mature, And then what happened was, then came, a new movement in the late 90s, and it was not cool. The Spice Girls took over, the boy bands, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, 98 Degrees, they all took over. Britney Spears took over. Christina Aguilera took over. And the rock fans, new metal, oh, he can't play that up here. Oh, yeah, and KLT was stuck with their daily quota of Carry On Wayward Son. Yeah, and still to this date, I have that giant grudge against Terry Ray. Biggest cunt in the history of rock radio. I can't believe KLT is number one in the rings. But then again, you have a lot of white trash losers in northern Michigan. But, that was probably the reason why I couldn't get a prom date. A good one. Because most of the girls at my school were my age, and they acted like goddamn 12-year-olds because they were into boy bands and shit like that. It was like, that's the problem. It was like, it made me feel alone. And, and I showed everyone because thankfully right around the same time, Grand Traverse Mall opened up Hot Topic. And, yeah, we finally got Hot Topic in 97, 98. It's one of the few stores at Grand Traverse Mall that's thankfully still there. Of course, I told you recently, Grand Traverse Mall was recently sold to a notorious slumlord. Yeah, I don't know why it didn't make news. But anyway, people should be upset. But anyway, so yeah, they used to sell shirts like Spear Britney. I ended up buying one. In Suck was another that I bought. It's like I was notorious for telling everyone boy bands are trashy, no talent, pieces of shit. They're just puppets, And this girl that I took to school every day and took her home because she didn't want to ride the bus like everyone else. Folks, guess what happened? Nobody took me home when I had problems on the school bus. Nobody took me to school. And I had multiple problems over the years. I even had a really bad bus driver when I was living with my mom. She screamed and yelled every day, and I hated her. I was on the verge of tears because of her. And I learned just a few years ago she was actually still a bus driver. And I'm like, no shit. Jesus Christ. But anyway, you see, folks, this is what happens when you live in a small town and they look at you and they're like, yeah, we got nothing for you. Sucks to be you. And that's what Northern Michigan was back in the late 90s. And, I got stuck with a mom and dad who, were manipulative, and people around me who wanted more from me and they wouldn't give me jack shit. And this girl, so this is the rest of the story with this girl. Her dad drove by my house one day as my dad and his new wife were packing to move to Kentucky. And he said, hey, what you guys doing? And my dad was like, yeah, we're moving away. And my dad, and he said, oh, okay, well, I'll see you guys another time. He didn't bother to help. He didn't bother, and my dad's in-law, was an 80-year-old man with a heart, who had a heart attack. It was like, oh my God. Yeah, it shows how self-centered these people were. And so, years later, out of the niceness of my heart, I became friends on Facebook with the son and the daughter. And the daughter, the girl I took to school with every day, almost every day, I should say, turns out that she had 4 kids with at least 2 different guys. At least 2 different guys, as far as I know. And as a matter of fact, her current partner is an older fellow who, I should point out, is, I guess he has a lot, I guess he's loaded. I guess he builds houses. And I'm like, oh, yeah, talk about gold digger right then and there. And one of the things that she's posted on Facebook the other day, couple months ago showed her and her family all on vacation, and in her words, the Gulf of America. Not the Gulf of Mexico, which is officially that. But, it's the Gulf of America now because Donald Trump said so. Yeah, the whole family apparently is a bunch of mega nuts. And her brother, this is what he posted. He posted a picture of the devil weaving a gay pride flag. Because apparently, in his mind, if you're gay, you're going to hell. And, it was like, I look at my old neighborhood in rural Antrim County. It's like, no wonder nobody liked me. Because I actually had something that the other kids did not have, and that was intelligence. And what happened was, as I've mentioned in the past, and not only that, earlier this week, by the way, the brother posted a stupid video on Zoran Mondani. I'll get to that in a second. Of course, what happened was, in my neighborhood, shortly after we moved out, trucker Randy Bishop moved into our neighborhood. He's the ultra right-wing cocksucker who screwed a lot of people out of money, and he didn't pay his taxes. He got busted. He became a felon. And then he moved up to he moved up into my old neighborhood. If you're curious about where he lives, you go you go into way north into Antrim County. So you go like 10 miles north of Elk Rapids. And so the story was, I actually drove by his house one day. So you go straight up, you drive up US 31, and then you get into, then you look for something called Barnes Road. If you're driving north from Elk Rapids, it's like 10 miles north, and it's on the right. Okay, you go on Barnes Road, and then you go way down the hill, and then you look on your right for Wood Special Drive. His house is on the first house his is the first house on the right if you drive, and it's right on the curb. And he actually had when I was driving out there, I saw his Cadillac with a license plate on there that said 97.7 CHY. That's the radio station he owns up in, through his wife, I should say, because legally he cannot own a radio station or even a gun because he's a convicted felon. But yeah, it's like we had some really shitty people in my neighborhood over the years. And, I mean, but it's every neighborhood, folks. I understand. But back to this guy posting the video of Mondani. I didn't see the video, but Fox News has said the same shit over and over about him. And that, he's a socialist. He's going to turn New York into Russia, into the Soviet Union. And no, he's not. Folks, quit comparing Mondani to the Soviet Union. Compare him to FDR, okay? Look at what he did. He realized that the real problem that America has is the redistribution of wealth. There's too many very wealthy people here in America, and yet what's going on is people are getting screwed over. There's giant lines to food banks right now. Everything's too fucking expensive. And, we have a government that's closed, and airports are having to cut flights. The holiday season's upon us, and everyone's blaming each other. The real truth is the Republicans are the problem, because they want more money for people who are not going to distribute it to anybody, and that's the wealthy. And I wish people would get their fucking head out of their goddamned ass and realize that this is what you get for voting for the Republicans. Reagan did it in the 80s. He lowered taxes for the wealthy. The Bushes did it. They ended, of course, we all knew what happened in 2008, the Great Recession. I was lucky to have a job, even though I worked for the same guy for nearly a decade and was getting paid about less money than what most fast food workers are getting paid now. And now it's happening with Trump. Donald Trump is a big pile of shit who doesn't care about you or me. He prayed after dumbasses. Howard Stern was right, folks. When Donald Trump is a smart man, because what he did was he went after people who would never be invited to Mar-a-Lago to get him into the White House. And look at those dumbasses now. They're losing their ass because they kissed the wrong ass. Oh, I don't want no black bitch in my White House. Well, if you're the one standing in line for the food bank because you lost your job and because you've lost your job and you can't pay the high grocery prices, tough shit. Don't look at me because I never voted Republican, because I care most of all for the one thing that we need the most: freedom of speech. The First Amendment. Republicans have been destroying it for years. And now they are going after the porn industry, and they're begging people to stop looking at porn. Here's my take. If I actually had a girlfriend right now, which I don't, I probably would stop looking at porn and enjoy her. I mean, hell, I was in a very serious relationship years ago, and I looked at women online, and they didn't do it for me anymore. But now I had this, and it's like, but, the relationship did not last, unfortunately. And I'm alone, and it's like most of the girls who act like they want me aren't my type. I don't want to date a woman with kids. I don't want to date somebody who looks like a refrigerator. I can go, hell, I sure as hell don't want to date somebody who is a Jesus freak either. Oh, man. I can go on and on, but this country is changing for the better because people are speaking out against Trump and his bullshit. The Democrats, I hope a bigger blue tsunami will happen this time next year. People are finally wising up because they made the same mistake they did years ago when they voted for people like the Bushes, Reagan, and now Trump. And the only people who are still believing in Trump are those who probably still watch Fox News all the time and allow themselves to be gaslit. So the rest of the story is, if you want democracy, if you care about America, if you would rather, yes, Trump said that he was going to destroy the woke. But guess what else is happening? Because of his people, they're getting rid of porn. All porn. And we can't have that, folks. Anyway, I can go on and on. But fuck the Mormons and their stupid ideas and their fake-ass religion. And hell, I've even had the Mormons come to my house multiple times begging me to learn the good news. And I got news, I'll give them good news the next time they knock on my door again. Come back to my house again and I'm going to call the cops on you. And there you go. All right, I best get going. Have a good Sunday. Go Lions. Good day and good luck to you all.